played around with stuff. Now, here's, if you want to freak out demons, if you want to just wig them out, don't eat. Don't eat. I went 13 days, no food, no water. We had 7 people attempt suicide during the time period that I was doing that fast while I was in jail. So there's something that happens when you get into a fasted state and you get around people that are suffering from some form of possession. It wigs them out. I don't know all the stuff. You guys are probably going to teach me some stuff. The fact that you guys I just experienced this stuff. I didn't know what was necessarily going on. Then I just started playing around with it because I'm sitting there in jail and I'm like, hey, I got a captive audience here. You know, I can get information from people. I can learn things from them. I can wig them out. So I just started messing around with demons while I was in there.
And so when you say messing around with demons, you're specifically referring to these prisoners that would have like multiple personality or like schizophrenia sort of thing, and that you're saying like it's this demon possession that is essentially also interacting with you through them, and that there's a way to directly communicate to the demon through this intermediary of the other human that is the inmate, correct?
Totally. And I would always ask them, what is your name? And they would, at first they would not want to give me their name. And finally they would give me a name. And I knew it wasn't the name of the inmate, but they would give me the demon name or the multiple names that are in them. It was really, I mean, I don't want to say like I'm in jail, right? But I'm like, what the hell else am I going to do while I'm in here? What was interesting is the guys that were like the hardcore gangbangers, the guys would have been the leaders of the gangs. They were not the ones that were suffering from the possession. They were in full control, and they were like my homies in there. They were in full control of their capacity. But it's
totally
the ones,
get what you're saying.
It's the ones that weren't like, they weren't a leader. I don't know.
Their mind's not there. They're split
Yes.
personality. They have what Western academia calls mental illness, quote unquote, labeled as these schizophrenics, bipolar, and continue on with the rest of them. But in reality, this is just a very new thing that has come in since like the First and Second World Wars and the last reset. Before that, for the last thousands of years, the church was responsible for it. They would take care of it through exorcisms, and they recognized it as possession, exactly that. And that everything you've said about your own experiences, I can personally relate to parallel similar experiences that I've had. I have not through prison, but just through at festivals with friends that are on drugs, or that, you know, with some gangsters and stuff. And it's, you know, if you've ever actually been in the presence of a human that has killed, like is a murderer, ended the life of other humans, you see it instantly in their eyes. You see that the demeanor within them, but like this other like change within the soul, right? Like this almost extra demon entity, something in it, you know, demon chip on their shoulder almost. But it's like they're usually also what you have these called split personality or schizophrenia, but that is in fact these other demon, or I possibly could be angelic, just they don't ever listen to the angels. They let the demons go in control, sort of thing.
That's what the Muslims say, right? The Muslims say some of these demons aren't necessarily serving the devil. They're just not necessarily serving the Elohim, you know?
Yeah, so I'll tell you a story. There was a guy that came up to me as all this is going on, and he's like, Shane, I have a demon in me. I know his name. His name is FIFO. He's been pestering me, and I know that you have the priesthood. Can you cast him out? And I'm like, yeah, man, I can cast him out for you. So I don't know what I'm doing. I'm going to perform in the Mormon church. We lay hands on people's head and we give them a blessing. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to cast this demon out. I lay my hands on this guy's head. He's got all the faith in the world. His name's Dino, but his demon that we're casting out, his name's FIFO. So I lay my hands on his head. I give him a priesthood blessing. I demand that this demon and any demon that's in them leave immediately. And boom, we do it. And he feels better. And I'm like, hey, that worked. I'm not kidding you. 2 hours later, I was so sick, like food poisoning type sickness. And I was sick for the next 48 hours. That demon, somehow I did something where it got a hold of me. And instead of necessarily like, I wasn't wigging out, going crazy, I was sick as a dog. And that was the last time I performed an exorcism in that manner.
Sacrificed your own like spiritual life energy of that moment to make the transfer of the demon out, and thus it fully drained you, collapsed your natural
That's
system.
my secret. That's my secret theory about what happened to Seth Garrett, our atheist Mormon friend, who's like the great grandma of Joseph Smith, right? Like he was like, well, I'm like, why are you atheist? Like, well, because I heard God talking, and that's crazy. So I realized I can't believe that. Like, well, that's not a really reasonable reason to become an atheist. And he's like, no, yeah, I was doing exorcisms in Taiwan. And started to tell his story for him. But now he's got like back problems and all this stuff. And I'm like, I mean, pray about it, like ever? You know, why not? It couldn't hurt, you know? But he's like, refuses.
How can you go
Here's
from,
I
like,
have a question
physically
about
practicing exorcisms where you've like experienced and interacted with these other dimensional entities to atheist that there's nothing else? That's
You're gonna have to
strange.
talk to him. He doesn't even believe in free will. It's crazy.
yeah, because here's a question I have regarding the devil and having a body. Because one way I was thinking about it after the endowment was when he is promised you will slither along the ground or whatever. I
On
saw
that
that as
belly of yours, yeah.
yeah, I saw that as possibly him being stripped of his body or something. Because I do know that Joseph Smith, I remember reading a quote of his, I don't know if I can find it, saying that the devil's punishment is having no body. And you could say that that punishment happened after the fall. You could say that punishment is a future punishment for outer darkness. But because there does seem to be a common theme among like the Satanists in the world that the devil is this sort of interdimensional force, right? When you take DMT. So, what are your thoughts on that? Is there like a devil above the devil that's an interdimensional force and Lucifer has a body, or what's going on there?
Steinbeck, Ariman, Lucifer, maybe? Is that right? Is it Steinbeck, Ariman, Lucifer? Someone tell me I'm wrong. It's not Steinbeck. I'm sorry. Why do I do this every time? Oh man, who did it? It's Steiner. I don't know why I always mix that up. So Steiner has that. Rudolf Steiner has that book on Ariman and Lucifer, and he kind of has like a map in between it that talks about the two concepts of, this sort of architectural Lucifer. Right, this is why I was interested earlier. I think you brought up Ariman, Frank, right?
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I'd like to hear you out on that because I always think of the light as Lucifer, the darkness is Ariman, Christ is the middle because of Steiner, and the idea that architecture is because of the architect is to create everything. Like Lucifer is trying to create everything, divide everything further and further into like subatomic levels, where Ariman is like the void or darkness. I don't know, but what do you have to say about all that first?
The way I understand Armin, it's like possession through technology, the same way I understand why we were given, alien technology and alien craft, however you want to look at that. So it's like a drip feed that over time we will build something that we think will be innocent and kind of like our own idea. And after hundreds of years or decades and decades, we'll start to move more and more quickly towards something that's like no longer just convenient for us, but rather so invasive into our lives and our consciousness that we're actually kind of leaving the experience that was living a life before and entering something else, something that's, the voyeur of some AI or some alien intelligence. And that's just what I gathered from all these different like Steiner quotes and documentaries about the thing I was watching on YouTube or whatever. But the way you laid out the paradigm with Lucifer and everything else, I would agree. It's interesting that the Lucifer's symbolism comes up in Lucifer's technology, yet Ahriman is the spirit of this mechanical, alien, or technological possession. You could
Right.
just stop at technology and get the idea, but I keep connecting it to aliens because, the whole concept of Lucifer's technology.
Right. Yeah. Definitely like a destructive force that, yeah.
Well, I was more so asking, like with Shane's idea of the devil actually having a body walking among us, not just a spirit body, but a physical body. What do you think of Joseph Smith saying that the devil's punishment is to have no body? Do you think that's a future event that's misinterpreted? Do you think that could have been at the fall, or?
Well, I
I
think
mean,
it's the Agent Smith concept. I think conceptually we're talking about. So I'm not an expert on exactly what you're saying, but I think that Andreas was right when he brought up Agent Smith, that it can go from person to person and be a possessive force.
So
And
it's like
it
this.
tries to get as many people for its army or whatever people think about the end of times or something like that. It tries to get as many people on its side as it can by making
Yeah.
us through technology just very bored and withdrawn and no longer social or intimate with other human beings or the universe or nature or
Use it
anything,
or
and
lose
cut
it,
off
right?
from all. Sure.
yeah,
We're cut off from all those
in,
things.
in the temple, he says, "I will take the bodies that thou createst for Adam and Eve, and I will possess those bodies." Like he says that's part of their strategy. That's part of their plan. Now we know that he has seed. I don't know how that works, but he clearly has seed and can do something with
Right.
it.
So
All I know,
just an idea with the duality, and that if God created the humans, Adam and Eve, and that we are God's seed through that, and then we ate that poisoned apple or whatever, and then took that seed from Satan, and thus with our
The other,
duality,
he's saying that
both
Cain
have
is the other.
angel and demon within us, that we both have the
Totally.
God connection and the devil connection, essentially. And this third dimension is our free will of which one we choose to feed. And are we feeding that demon and becoming a Luciferian ourselves, or are we feeding that holy inspired God creation building of life and connection and connecting to source, and then funneling God's message to you through being on that higher level dimension?
Well, but there's also
Here's
the idea.
here's an
What if
idea
there?
I have.
Wait, but what if there is like a Luciferian bloodline, right? So the idea that there could be the Lucifer seed with Eve, as well as Adam seed with Eve. So they're separate bloodlines.
now, here's
Because
what's interesting.
at Noah's point, they kind of get back together through the wife.
Here's what's interesting. Clearly, they're in the Old Testament. They are like, hey, do not breed with this line of Cain. Do not do. It's like don't marry outside of your line. They're very specific, and so you have to ask yourself the question: why are they so specific?
Yeah, are they racist or are they like species?
And that also goes back to the book of Enoch, talking about the fallen angels coming down and having children with the daughters of men, right? With the leader of the fallen angels,
right,
Azazel, coming down.
That's a really good point, right? So if these sons of God who haven't taken on a body can go and procreate, what was Satan also? A son of God. And so they have some procreative powers. How they do it, yeah, he probably doesn't have one of these clunky physical bodies like we got. He probably has one that doesn't get sick and is way better than this. And he didn't want to go backwards. And that's what we agreed to do. We agreed to go backwards so that we could go forwards in the Grand Council before we came down here to do this. Guys, I got to go. I got to go to bed. I'm an old man.
Well, here's an interesting idea before you go. So here's an idea. So in the Joseph Smith book of Enoch, so me looking at Enoch, I'm like, okay, that's not all historical. That's sort of liturgy mixed with stuff. The sons of God who come upon the daughters of men are fallen priests within like Enoch's order. They're like the priesthood holders. So what if Satan is only able to manifest physically by making some sort of covenant with a physical person, right? So manifesting, but it has to be of a person with a certain level. So it would have to be like a priesthood holder or something, right? That only that way could Satan manifest physically, right? So you have the sons of God coming upon the daughters of men. That could be a double meaning there. They could be the priests, like in Joseph Smith's, but they could also be angelic beings.
Frank is totally passing out. Shane, It's time to go to bed. Bernie,
Much love.
Aiden, anyone got a last word? Well,
I
thank you
may
for
or
being
may not have been slightly beginning to fall asleep.
State is where you meet up with angels. Just make sure to try to shake their hands, but don't trust them anyway. Shane's got a point. We'll see you next time.
But make
Again,
sure you summon an angel and not the demon, right? Because demons like to trick, and they might give you what seems like a blessing and a godly
totally.
gift, but in fact, you've made a deal with the
Wait,
devil.
that's a great point, because the whole idea, like Jacques Vallée's the cover of his book, like the gray alien holding the demon face and the angel face and all that, the deception concept behind, even if you forget everything I was saying about aliens, technology or whatever.
Quickly have to say, because that just made me
Last
think, the
one.
gray aliens, the elongated skull folk, and that supposedly these elongated skull folk were this genetic line that was the mix of the sons of God that came from Earth and the men that were already on Earth, and that if those are these gray aliens, are the gray aliens essentially what we're reading about in those other
And the
lines,
problem
and
was that
there's
the elongated
no-
skull folks, they had this really like strong, pungent, smelly, elongated musk. I love you guys. Good night.
See you guys.
LaterWave.